Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner. Tonight, we've got a bunch of wonderful coaches here to talk about defense and how defense is key. They are excited to answer all of your questions, so please make sure you drop them down in the chat on Facebook, and we'll make sure that they see those, and they will do their best to answer as many questions as you can throw at them. So I'm going to hand it off to Jarl Ailgheanan to get us started.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Coach's Corner. Every high school coach in America at one point or another, at least all the offensive line and or offensive coordinators have said, the best defense is a good offense. Well, that may or may not be true, and we might argue that one way or the other this evening, but our thoughts are more going for the other perspective, that defense is key. And then we will explore that from both sides of the argument. Just the other day, Sun Tzu in The Art of War said, attack is the best, or is the secret of defense. Defense is the planning of an attack. That actually would lend itself to the best defense is a good offense. But I think if you actually explore that, it really is saying that, the way to beat your opponent is to understand him and keep them from being able to hurt you. And sometimes you'll use defense as part of your attack planning. So, we're going to look at this from a couple of different angles. We're going to try to explain just exactly what we mean by defense and all the different components that make up defense in SCA combat. And, but right now I'd like to welcome our distinguished panel to the group. We've got coming in from the great kingdom of Artemisia, His Majesty Sean. Sean, welcome to the program tonight. Thanks, Coach.
Hey, thanks for having me, always. I'll start off by saying I'm probably the odd man out in this particular panel as far as my emphasis on defense. But I've always said that defense is no less than half of the fight. The fight that we have, the game that we play is very simple. It's you hit that person with the stick and you keep them from hitting you with a stick. Two largely equal parts to me. But you've got to do, you got to do that part. You got to keep them from hitting you with the stick. Otherwise, you're watching them walk out of the field a champion or whatever. So my emphasis is probably a little less than Ailgheanan's and Rangvaldr and some of the others. But we'll talk a little bit later about some of the things that you can do to improve your defense, to learn how to read your opponents better, to get a better understanding of what's going on. But yeah, always happy to be part of this discussion.
Thanks, Sean. Next up from the Mid-Realm, we have His Grace Rangvaldr. And these next two guys, no offense to Sean, but these next two guys, both Rangvaldr and Duke Craven, are two of my favorite fights that I personally have in the known world. I think, the way they dissect me and just tear me apart defensively and stop the things that I want to do really excite me, really push me, make me go back home, make me think about what I need to do to be able to break them down. And it rarely ever happens. But next up is His Grace Rangvaldr. Welcome to Coach's Corner, Coach.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. I was thinking about this the last few days and how I would phrase it. And part of me was wanting to say defense is primary. And then I started to realize, my way of fighting defensively has a lot of offensive traits to it. So I started thinking, like you mentioned in the first place, the best defense is a strong offense. But I think that's also misleading. So I think what we should start with first is defining. And you also said something that I think summed it up really well. Basically, what we do is we try to hit the other person with a stick and make sure they don't hit us with a stick. So in essence, everything that is avoiding being hit is defensive. Everything that's about hitting the other guy is offensive. But I think what we're going to find is there's a big gray area where that overlaps. Because as a quick example, I see a lot of fighters of sometimes particularly high caliber standing toe to toe, and their primary defense is the ability to quickly block and strike. And there's no sense of control. I think that's what we'll find is control will be a big part of what defense is. Craven, it's good to see you here too.
Unmute yourself. Come on in.
Hey, I'm good about waiting my turn in meetings. But yeah, thanks for having me. And I can echo all the same words. I do think, I was thinking about it this week myself too. And I think just like offense, defense is a multi-layered aspect and approach that you do to everything. And it's so unique to each individual in a lot of ways, to where we have a common concepts. And I think that's really where most people, when they focus on the different concepts, they can derive their attention to how to train and what to train. So that was just a small bit there on my mind.
So I got a question for you, Craven, but first I'll just share my own personal experience. So when I first started fighting, obviously I had the tall thing going for me. I've always had that, but I was fast. I mean, I won most of my fights that I fought, that I did win, because I was able to throw faster and more than my opponent. And that took me really a long ways. But the long ways that it took me was until I found other people who were just as fast, or defensively, a better, more rounded fighter. And I'm curious, if anyone else shared that path, or if they really came to it more from a defensive perspective to begin with. Craven, did you start off mostly offense, or have you always been such a strong defensive fighter?
I originally was being taught to be more offensive because my knight was 6 foot tall and, was in your face fighter, and when I started training and learning about fighting and the different aspects of it, my foster knight, Viscount Eldred, was 5 foot tall. And, we would complain about, being in a tournament, I can't kill this guy because his calibration is a little higher than mine. And, he's like, well, you just got to defend until he dies, and really started thinking about defense. And a good defense is the complement to the offense, and you can do what you want to do when you have a good defense. So I guess I really focused early on through most of my time in defense.
Excellent. Sean, you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, starting off young as I was and having done a lot of pellet work before I started fighting, I came out guns a-blazing. I had the hand speed, and I still do have that kind of hand speed, but I don't use it nearly as much. Because I found that just pure aggression and just throwing combos and just relying on percentages and relying on, if I throw enough stuff out there, then something's bound to get through, right? And what I found after a while is, if you make better choices about the blows that you're throwing, among other things, you just get to see the fight better. You get to see what's happening. And as far as defense goes, if I'm throwing this 10-shot combo expecting something that's going to get through, I'm not actually looking for what my opponent is blocking. I'm not looking at their defense at all. I'm not trying to see how to get around what they're doing. And at the same time, I'm throwing all this stuff out there, and when you put that much aggression, that much offense into it, you don't have time to think about what's actually happening in the fight and what your opponent is doing. And so I found being able to slow down the frequency of shots allowed me to see the whole fight better and give you a better understanding of, how your opponent is responding to what you're doing, and, and what you need to be looking out for, as you throw something and your opponent decides to counter that. If you're not able to see what's happening in the fight, you're going to get hit in the middle of your brilliant 10-shot combo. and you get hit right in the middle of this, and you just never saw any of that coming. So being able to kind of slow that down and take your time and make better decisions about the shots that you're throwing is actually leads to being able to see better on your defense.
It's a good point. So when I started, not long after I started, I kind of transitioned from a larger shield to a 24-inch round, strapped round. And at 6'5", a 24-inch strapped round meant I was either swinging or I was getting hit. Those were my really only options, and, getting hit in the leg a lot at my height. So, I really kind of picked up some of my ground game early on. It wasn't until I went back to a slightly larger shield that it gave me the opportunity to breathe and start thinking about defense and the things that make up good defense. Tell us a little bit about your journey, Rangvaldr. You strike me as someone who might have always been very defensive, but that might not be true.
I started out being a terrible fighter. I had, like a lot of us, I'd had some martial training before, but it had been over a decade since I'd done any karate that I used to do. I've never been a natural athlete. I do not have great speed or strength. I'm 5'10", so I'm average height. About the only thing I have that's unusual is I'm left-handed, and that's not that big a deal. So really, my journey was very different. I did not come out guns a-blazing, nor was I able to really stand there and take a lot. What I was blessed with was a few things. I had some people around me who were exceptional. I've been able to train with Brannis for over 30 years I've been fighting. Sir Osis from Eldemir was a big influence on me having Florentine early on. There's Dog. Dog was really, his Grace Dog Thorgrimsson was probably one of the best first influences I had on proper body mechanics. But basically when I started, I was just playing for fun. I was never good. And somewhere along there, in that joy of playing and being exposed to good people, I stumbled on, I guess, what my forte is. Because I don't have the speed or athleticism or any of that, I had to find a way to understand what was going on before it happened. So I learned how to read people and how to misdirect them. So for me, defense wasn't about being able to block shots or even throw a lot to try to kill them first. For me, it was, how can I control this? How can I figure them out, know what they're going to do, and then I don't have to worry about it. It doesn't matter if they're faster. It doesn't matter if they're stronger or taller or whatever weapon style. As long as I understood what they were doing, then I could have some form of success. And so for me, yeah, I stumbled into it with the blessing of some really great people around me to help teach me. So that's the path I came up.
That's not exactly where I thought it was going, but that's really neat to know. So for this next little bit, we're going to kind of bring all the group in and just sort of throw different ideas out on what we think are the building blocks or the components or the fundamentals of good defense. I will start and pick and tell you what, sort of my go-to main sort of thing is. And I often talk about the guard in general, but the guard in general to me is the whole of what we're doing. It's not just how you hold your sword and your shield. I think that might fall into some other category that we'll bring up in a second. But the thing that I think of when I'm working and focusing on defensively, how I want to try to control the fight is range. Through range, I am able to, it's simple as not get hit and oftentimes be in an advantageous offensive position that my opponents don't have. If I work it correctly, then, it's not just I can hit you and you can't hit me. That last part is important, super important to me. And it's not that you can't hit me. It's just that it becomes riskier to hit me. And when people take risk offensively, then they're actually open for the counters and they're open for, the various things a good fighter can do to try to get their shots in. So the thing that I'll throw out first is range. And I think that mastering it, first of all, understanding it comes well before mastering it. Just, knowing where you are, knowing where your opponent is, and knowing the difference between their effective ranges and your effective ranges, that was like going up 3 levels for me. I mean, the bells just went off a lot when I finally began to understand that range, was a 2-way street, and how to work both sides of that street to do it. So that's mine. Anyone want to jump in with one?
I'll jump into the next one here. So yeah, range is absolutely critical. I mean, if you control where the fight is happening, then you control the fight, right? And so I think Eleanor's got some good points on that. I'm gonna jump on something else about this. So let's look at blow recognition. Like, what, when somebody is throwing a shot at you, how are you going to account for that shot? So when I think about this, we have to realize that as I see it, there are basically 2 factors that you need to account for when somebody is throwing a shot at you, and that is when and where. Identifying where they're going to be throwing it and when they're throwing that shot. Because if you know when they're going to throw and you know where they're throwing, then that's the whole game right there, right? You can account for that blow. At the very least, you can protect yourself, but ideally, you should be able to capitalize on that as well. Capitalize on being able to shut down that shot and that return. That's something that Rangvaldr was talking about being able to read the fight. That's something I do exceptionally well. That's part of my defense, is being able to understand what my opponent wants to do. And that's for me, it's a lot of when and where. And when you really get right down to it, as far as where your opponent is going, we really just need to account for up, down, left, right. You can break the body up in the quadrants, and as long as you can correctly identify the quadrant that they're going for, the defense that you're going to put up for that is generally going to be the same, right? I don't need to figure out how to block, the flat snap for somebody who's 6 foot tall and the flat snap for somebody who's 6'6". I mean, once I identified that it's going to be coming into that same quadrant, the things that I'm going to do to account for that blow are generally going to be the same. Understand too that when we're looking at up, down, and left and right, because of the way that our eyes work and the way that our mechanics work, generally speaking, you will be able to determine left and right first, and then you will be able to determine up and down. Because a lot of the mechanics that we throw going to our sword side, once it starts going to a certain point, once you hit that point of no return, then it's pretty much going to that one side, and we can identify that it's going left and right, and then we can identify that it's going up and down. So once you can figure that out, figure out the when and the where, and something else to understand about that too is, in a lot of cases, your opponent is going to provide you one of those variables. They're going to get all antsy and their shoulders are going to kind of cinch up a little bit, and you can kind of tell that they're about ready to throw a shot. Or in most cases, as far as the when, you will have people that have no idea that they just straight up looked at a target. They're going to look straight at it, and I get that a lot with the shield that I use is somewhat smaller. It's 22 by 30, and I'm 6 foot tall. And so my leg is exposed, and that's one of those things that I know is there. And a lot of times I get somebody, they'll just look right down at that leg and they're like, oh, I bet I can get that leg. And I'm like, yeah, I bet you can. And I will actually feed it to them at that point, because now they've made a decision. They've decided that that's what they're going to do. And I'm just encouraging them in their decision-making process. And they have flat out told me where they're going to go. And once I feed that target to them even more, they can't change that decision that they've made. And so now I can actually dictate when it's happening. So now I have control of the when and the where, and I can capitalize on that. So those are some things to think about.
Lefties, either one of you, jump in.
We're both polite, it's like, you want to,
Painfully polite.
yeah, I know. Well, hey, I'll go since I'm still talking. There we go. Sorry, Ron. To me, I mean, components of it, it's the same as the offense components. You have range, you have position, you have tension involved. All these pieces are there. And the way I look at it is you either have avoidance and you're blocking. One of the two things are happening in a fight. And that's the way I divide the defense up. Like Sean talking about the zones. Yeah, the zones are a piece of it, but they're all different based on the distance you are and the position you are from your opponent, right? Because I live off of the mindset of probabilities, because my opponent's position and where he's at and what he's doing determines what shots he has capability of throwing and the probabilities of that shot hitting. So that determines the defensive reaction and what zone to cover and so forth. So I would have to say, those elements, understanding those elements is probably, one of the parts of defense, the foundation of defense is what you apply to offense.
Yeah. I have a question for kind of both of you, but I'll start with you, Craven. Both of you have what I consider to be just outstanding guard discipline. I mean, the good guard that, like, if you were to show someone what it looks like when you're fighting, you're actually doing that through the fight so much. And when you throw a shot or, if you have to step out of it for some reason, you're right back into your guards. How do you get that strong discipline to come back to what I would consider to be a good guard, even when through the course of the fight, sometimes it takes you out of it, but you never forget. I never catch you having come out of your guard and then not going back in immediately. That
Guard is paramount, I think. Going back a step in our conversation, I was listening to you guys, and everybody's clarifying things really well, which I really like hearing. I think what I would add to that is what we're talking about can be classified in two general areas. One is the tools that we're using for defense, mm-hmm. and how we're applying those tools. And I think it's important that we identify that, because we're also looking at varied levels of skill, right? So when somebody's early on in their fighting career, the tools are far more important than the application. Learning, like you said, learning range. Craven had mentioned position. I would go so far as to say understanding angles, understanding that you can be closer, but not in front of an opponent, as a very simple example. And then that starts to blur into being able to recognize, as Sean was talking about, being able to recognize what an opponent is doing so you can choose a proper defense. And then it gets into the more advanced, where not only are you able to recognize, but you're able to, like Sean again said, several seconds ahead of time, most people will tell you what they're going to do. Being able to read that and then go a step further and actually make them do things. And that's where I try to live, is at that point where I'm the one who's in charge of what my opponent's actions are. Going back to the stance, to me, that stance is paramount. From that, if I'm in a good stance, I can do everything, and none of it has to be, when I'm in this position, I do it this way. When I'm in this position, I do it this way. No, everything comes from here. I throw all my shots the same wherever they're going. And there's a simplicity in that, and an advantage in that it's more difficult to read. There's a Duke I know who he's got, I'm going to say 6 or 8 different stances. He will change through depending on where he wants to put pressure. And they work because they put heavy pressure someplace and people don't know what to do with them. What I find when I fight him, though, is that heavy pressure in one area, and I know all of you guys will totally get this, all that threat and unusual pressure in one area means you now have at least 50% of yourself that you do not have to defend anymore because of that. So as a trainer, it's important to me that I get my people to understand this stance, because from there they can do everything, and without giving away any more unnecessary information or causing themselves any unnecessary limitations. So yeah, that stance, you're exactly right. I do my damnedest to stay in it. Typically, if I get killed, I'm usually out of stance.
And to me on that part, you know, we always call it the home stance, right? And you always practice to go back to home, so you train yourself at the behavior of always going back there after your interaction. So your defense is at its highest point because that's your weakest time. The other part too is, to complement what Rangvaldr is saying, is the aspect of, like, I always look at it, I'm trying to be in a neutral position. And if I keep my guard always neutral, you don't know what I'm going to try to do, whatever. I have the equal distance to go everywhere with my sword. I don't give myself a benefit in one place or the other, but it gives me the aspect of I'm harder to read versus being in a high guard or off the shoulder or something, or, changing up. And, so it's like, yeah, being square, a little more square, given that neutral. Just to add to what he's saying, is because I watch him do the same thing. He might be more forward with his, and I'm more closer in with my body I'm trying to work with range differently, but it's the same thing really. And we just stay neutral towards, like, yep, I can be wherever I need to be.
I would
feels like sometimes
I'm going to add to it because I know Craven does this too, but I just want people to understand it is neutral. And in a way, we have everything that is open is about equally open. There are real advantages to shutting down certain areas where, I don't have to worry about these. I only have to worry about these other ones. But it's not as simple as that. That stance puts us in that neutral position. And then we use the tools that Sean and Ailgheanan were talking about, of range, angle, reading opponents. So we don't have to protect different areas with weapon and shield. We're doing it with position and timing. So I don't have to protect a bunch of different areas because I simply move to where it's difficult for the opponent to actually have the shot in the first place. My preference when it comes right down to it for defense is not being able to read the person so I can get the block. It's being able to read the person so I can change the fight so they never get a chance to even throw the shot. That's my ideal. They should never be able to, they should always feel like, I don't quite have it. The angle's not quite right. The range isn't quite right. And if they throw, they're going to be out of position. That's ideal for me.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, these guys talking about the neutral position, as far as stance goes, I look at that from where my shield rests as well. My opening stance, if you will. You see a lot of fighters that are trying to, they have a super defensive mindset when they start the fight. You've got the hand right up in front of the face and you got the shield right here. Those are defensive minded setups that are relying largely on the fact that I've got this one thing covered, so you can't get to this one thing, right? And this neutral position that we're talking about as far as how I use it, rather than trying to cover all of one thing, like instead of trying to use my shield to cover all of my head, or my sword and my shield to cover all of my head. So rather than covering all of one thing, I'm going to expose a little bit of everything. So one of the things that we get from this is an embarrassment of riches to some extent, right? It's like, well, I got a little bit of his head and I got a little bit of his leg and a bit of his arm over there. And so you have all these other targets that maybe they can get to. So now your opponent's put in a position where they have to try to figure out which one they have the best percentages of getting to. And meanwhile, by having a neutral shield position, all of my defense is a shorter block to everything rather than a longer block to the one thing. So if I'm covering my head, especially with that smaller shield that I'm using, if I'm covering all of my head, in order for me to block my leg, I've got a farther distance that I have to go to be able to catch that. And it's one of these things where, yeah, when you look at my basic setup, yeah, my head is wide open, or it looks like it's wide open.
Right.
But the thing is, I know that it's open. And again, like I was talking earlier, when somebody, when I line up on somebody and they give a look at the leg, or they look at the off, you can see somebody's hand turn just slightly to be able to angle for that offside head. So once they've told me that they've got that offside head, I'm like, okay, yeah, now that I know where you're going, and by knowing that everything is open, in that neutral stance, I can use that to dictate like where they're going, and I can use that to read. But yeah, having that neutral position is just, again, rather than covering everything, I'm going to expose a little bit of everything. So I think that's kind of what they were talking about with that card.
Yeah. One of the things you guys, as you were talking, it came to mind, we all know that sort of intermediate level fighter, and this isn't one person. This is just every intermediate level fighter at one point or another, and they're in some sort of guard that's saying, I don't want to be one shot. And when you see them, you're like, well, okay, then I'm not as interested in one-shotting you as I am in winning. And I see exactly how to do that now because you so don't want to be one-shot, So, you wind up getting coached out of that. Hopefully good fighters will eventually grow out of the notion of, I just don't want to be one-shot. It's like, well, you don't want to be hit at all. And that's a bigger, larger, better place to be trying to put yourself into rather than I just don't want to be hit with the one shot. So as I was, kind of preparing for this episode, of all things, a quote that hit me, that stuck with me, was from an investor that I think makes sense. But a defensive investor's chief emphasis is the avoidance of serious mistakes or losses, with a secondary aim of freedom from effort, annoyance, and the need for making frequent decisions. And while the concept behind what this person was saying was all about how to be a defensive investor, that's exactly how a lot of really good defensive fighters fight. They're not making, they avoid making serious mistakes by having a really good defense. And because they also have a really good defense, they're not making frequent strikes or frequent decisions. They're making effective and, very efficient decisions. So when I saw that, I was like, well, the person said it, he wasn't thinking about fighting at all, but it absolutely certainly makes sense, especially, and it's something that I've said a lot, and I know that I've heard Craven say it, and I know a lot of the other fighters, they approach sometimes fighting from a very risk management perspective of, what's the least amount of risk that I can do that's going to give me the greatest reward in this fight? And figuring that out is kind of the whole thoughts of figuring out how to fight. How do I put myself at very little risk and get my hits? So the defensive fighter has an advantage, I think, on some other fighters, and that is because they're able to let the fight kind of tell them how to do that. And if you're just swinging shots, you don't have any time to process. You don't have any time to think about what's going on. You can't actually then say, okay, so what is their range? What are they doing with their, how are they moving? Where are their hips? If you're just swinging like gangbusters at each other, you don't know what the other person's hips are doing. And, whereas that might not be the end all be all to how to win a fight, it's absolutely an advanced way of looking at things whenever you're to see the whole fight and you see what people's positions are in the middle of things. So,
Ailgheanan, there's more to that too. If you're just throwing stuff out there and you end up getting the win, but you don't know why, right? You don't know why you won the fight. You were just throwing some stuff out there because the stuff was happening. And if you don't know why you won the fight, then that's not transferable.
Right.
Like you can't teach somebody else how to do that. So yeah, going very much to your point there is like, all this offense and all this just throwing shit down range and hoping that something's going to stick. Like that's not fighting. You can't give that to somebody else. And if you can't give it to somebody else, then it's like there's a limit to its effectiveness.
Exactly.
There is also a limit in the type of defense. I think that's something that I feel like I want to keep coming back to reminding, because we do have different levels of people. So what we're talking about when we're saying to them is a defensive fighter is going to be a much more successful fighter and one who can learn more, which are true. As long as people understand when we say defensive, it means exactly what we have been defining it as. Defensive is not the guy who does, as you said, this. yes, this is a extremely tight defense. They brought their shield. They've got usually a large shield. It's going from the top of their knees to just under their nose. They've shut down their entire body. They pulled their arm in, so their arm is void. They maybe have the wrist out, which isn't legal. You've got this much space and just a little bit of head up here, and that's it. I mean, wouldn't we just say that's a fantastic defense? Except the problem is, and the way I'll explain it to a newer fighter is, when or a mid-level fighter rather, when they're doing that, when I fight somebody who is defensive, when they fight somebody who's defensive and this kind of defensive, the feeling I get when I fight that kind of person is, this person is going to be hard to hit, but I don't feel any sense of risk. So I can try harder. I can do things that pull me that I wouldn't necessarily risk, because this person is not a threat to me until I do something. So I'm the one who's initiating. It's just as bad as somebody who's truly an offensive fighter, as you say, throwing lots of shots because he doesn't even know what's going on. So as long as I understand his speed and timing, I can choose a location and know when he's coming. That doesn't matter either. So what we're looking at is these tools that we talked about are really important when you're beginning fighting. You have to understand how to block, but we're going to show you from a position that's not necessarily the best defense stance-wise. Like, this covers everything up. Why wouldn't I do this? You're not going to do it because we're going to have these other tools. Ultimately, your goal is, like the guy said, to not be hit. And one of the exercises I'll do with some mid-level fighters is fight someone and don't get hit. Threaten them, do your whole fight, but don't get hit. And what I mean by that is not just you. Don't let them touch your weapons. Don't let them touch your shield. How much control can you have of your opponent that they don't even get to touch your equipment? That's a very different fight than someone who stands up there and blocks real well. So remember, people, when you're hearing the word defense from us today, it's not, this is a defensive fighter. A defensive fighter is somebody who understands the fight, controls it, and creates an environment that is, within reason, safe from them getting hit. That's what we're trying to do. Blocking's important, but eventually it's going to go beyond blocking to being able to read an opponent and then to eventually control the opponent. If you're the one who decides what, when, and where they throw, which you can do, then that's your perfect defense.
Yeah, that's outstanding points. I'm going to throw out just a few of the other sort of building blocks or components of defense that we may or may not have mentioned already. We already did range and we already did control. However, I think I'd kind of like to take control, put it in all caps, and move it up sort of as the main heading for all of this, because everything underneath control is just what you do to have that control. And if you're controlling range, and you're controlling your guard, and you're controlling when the shots get thrown and what shots get thrown, and if you're controlling the pace of the fight, if you're controlling the movement that's being done, then while those are all elements of defense, and they're also elements of offense, it's the control part which I think makes each of the fighters that I'm talking to here so good at what they do. Sean's very offensive, but he has all of that defensive control, and he understands his ranges, and he understands how to manipulate and read his opponent and get the best to get his wins through his fights. And Rangvaldr and Craven, while I may say they're a defensive fighter, that just means they know all of the things that make up a good fight, and they're controlling it. They're not in any hurry, and they're going to take the first, easiest, safest win they can get from the fight. But they're going to be able to survive any number of things you throw at them while they're figuring out what the easiest way to beat you is.
It's the
so there's
block
dodging.
that does it every time.
Yeah, there's dodging. There's passive blocks. There are active blocks. There's the movement that you do that is part of controlling and managing your defense. And, there's using your opponent's own shield or his off weapon or some other aspect of what he's bringing into the fight as part of your defensive. Basically you can use their shield as your shield at times. All of these things are what I would consider to be, components of. Then it's certainly not an exhaustive list. If you guys got any more components of, or anything you want to add about that short list that I gave there.
I'll throw something out here that a lot of folks don't think about as far as options for how to deal with shots that are coming in at you. So essentially, when we're talking about defense and accounting for blows and that sort of thing, we have a few options. I mean, the best option, obviously, is don't be there when the shot lands. Right? We hear that all the time. That's something that Ailgheanan is particularly good at. Is he's just not going to be there. Rangvaldr and Bronos are also both very good at that particular aspect of, you're not going to have a chance to hit me because I'm just not going to be there. So I mean, you can evade a shot that way. You can block a shot. You can block it with either your sword or your shield or both, understanding that if you are going to use your offensive tool to complement your defense, you are compromising your offense for the sake of defense. And that's the thing we were talking about earlier. When you're in that super tight guard, that is a purely defensive mindset where your whole thing is like, I'm just not going to get hit. And by doing so, you're completely compromising your offense, and you've moved well past that 50%, importance in that defense, where like you don't have any offense. But when we talk about,
can I hold you right there?
Yeah,
because I think you're absolutely right on that. When you're using your sword as your block, you have the potential to be limiting offensively what you can do. However, I think we've all also mastered certain blocks that we do that are setting up the offense with
absolutely.
the sword. You reach out if someone tries to hit me on this eye, and I can actually block it with this, with my sword like that,
Yep.
offense is coming immediately.
Yeah.
I am, that's, if I get this block, you can guarantee something is coming straight down then, because you allowed me to basically put my hand out in front of me, and to get a foot potentially of starter to get my shots off. So if I can get a block that will lead to offense, I certainly will. But you're absolutely right. I love there are certain counters and riposte that you can do that and sometimes it might mess you up, but other times it can really lead you to the win.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I do all the time. A lot of times, when I get when somebody throws a flat snap at me, I'll do that cross block over here, and I'll actually get the block with my shield, and I can trap somebody's sword between my shield and my sword, just enough of a delay to keep them from having a good recovery. And yeah, that time that I have that they don't get to recover, I move right into that. So yes, absolutely, you can use your sword as a defense, but you have to, again, risk and reward, right? I mean, are you going to be able to recover off of that once you have used your offensive tool to account for the blow? Is it going to give you something else, or is it just totally neutralized your entire offense? But when we talk about evading a shot, like not being there, right? Oftentimes when we think about evading a shot, most people think that evading a shot just means running away from it and just going out of it. So a concept that I try to talk about and I try to teach is the idea of evading forward. So as something comes in at you, and I know this is totally anathema for Ailgheanan, because it's like, I don't want to be any closer to their offense than I have to be, because that could get me hit, right? But if something is coming at you, you can step into that as well, and by taking that step in, you are bringing your defense to bear in a way that changes the angles, and it changes the sight picture, and it changes your opponent's delivery path. And so it's something to think about for sure. And evading forward is not an all-time, every time solution, but it is definitely a solution that a lot of people don't think about. And one of those things you can do is something that's coming in at you, you can step in, your shield now changes the angle or flat out blocks the shot that your opponent wanted to take, and it also puts you in a position to have access to targets as well. So it's just another one of those components to think about. You know, when we think about evading a shot or we think about blocking it, that's another tool that we can use to put ourselves in position to have better access. And that's how I use, as Ailgheanan was talking about earlier, that's how I use some of my offensive mindset to counter, to use as part of my defense as well.
Sean, I have seen Rangvaldr, and I'll see if he can talk about this, but you know, I've seen on video him do something that was so cool. I absolutely tried to recreate it, and that is definitely an evade forward kind of mentality. But there's a video of a Champions Battle, I think, where Rangvaldr was fighting his Grace Kenrick from the East, and you know, since Kenrick's also left-handed, you know, this really translates back to any righty on righties who want to try this kind of forward evade. But as the shot comes in, as you know, it looks like it's a flat snap, which is a weird shot to throw anyway, lefty on lefty, I thought. But as the shot kind of comes in, he evades forward, ducks, passes completely, and is able to throw a backhand at his opponent as he's going through. Do you remember that shot, Rangvaldr?
Yeah, that's a couple of people got some really good video of that. I'm actually, I think it's a good one to bring up for this. Kenrick is an exceptional fighter and more athletic than I am. So in the realm of speed and athleticism, he had me beat because I'm not as fast. As far as control of where his body is and his stance, he had really good control of those as well. And this goes to what Ailgheanan was talking about when he said we're moving the word control to the top of all of these things. He totally nailed it. Control is ultimately what I'm looking for because it gives me everything I want. And I had to, in that fight, figure out how to control Kenrick. The step to control is information gathering, learning how to read an opponent, how to pull information from them without giving them more information. There's a whole process of reading, how to threaten, change position, feint, fire, so I can gain information on their movement, methods of blocking, when they like to throw, how fast they like to throw. Giving pressure back. I believe Sean alluded to this. Part of this is an offensive mindset that gives a greater defense is by threatening back into places where somebody is open, whether you are firing or feinting, for a moment, it takes them out of the planning mind and they prepare for whatever the thing is. While they're doing that, that's bought you time to continue to process while they're not processing. So that's what I tried to do with Kenrick is I was looking for this information. And so in that fight, that shot looks really cool, like I did something magic. But to me, the fight was all before that. That shot was not the fight. That was the end of the fight. The fight was everything before that, where early on, he fires that flat snap. He does a leaping shot, and I pick up the block. I actually cross-blocked with my sword, which is a bad sign, and he still made contact. So I took most of it out, but now I knew he had explosive ability and could cover a great deal of range, including on this side of my head. So I watched my timing and ranging. I started poking around to see how he moved his shield. Once I'd figured out how he moved, when he moved his shield, what kinds of things made him move the shield out of the way, what would make him throw at my head. Once I'd figured out all those triggers, I stacked them up and I looked for the trigger point that showed he was ready to execute. And then I made a move that's forward and up. So I threatened his arm. I went forward and up with my threat. He saw that as crossing his eye line. He moved up and forward. As soon as I felt that, I knew where he was going. I switched to forward and down. His shot came. I was already headed under it. I went past his shot and threw the leg shot. Now, to be clear in all that, he still recovered enough with his body that he got hit in the leg. That was meant to kill him. It only got the leg because he still made body changes because he was reading me as I passed by him. He knew he had missed his shot. He knew he didn't have a shield block and he knew he was out of position. And he made I think he pushed himself up or forward to try to get past me, and I was able to get the leg, but I planned on a kill and he took the kill away from me. So
I love hearing the components parts. Oh, and yeah, I'm not muted. Great. I love hearing how actually your mindset worked in that, because watching the video is one thing, but hearing how you put it all together is another. I took it to one of our practices and was able to use it against Sir Nikita, and a lot of it is the same thing. You're having to read the fight to figure out, where you could even begin, to apply it. But as I was making the underneath pass, so she wasn't expecting a 6'5" dude to try to pass under his sword arm. But as I was making that pass and I realized it was going to work, it was just a weird sort of magical feeling. It's like, wow, this is working. I'm basically teleporting, to his side and now behind him. And, I think I just I hit him. I went straight to the field, took off all my stuff and, called it a day. It's like, there's no more fighting you can do after that. So, Louis asked a great question. He asks a great question almost every week. He started off with a statement. Control is a great point. Something to think about. What can you or your opponent control in a fight? We can up with more than 15 things on this list, yada, yada. I can tell you this list will grow as you learn more to develop understanding and gain experience. Right. Okay. So what types of things Craven, do you do to start to how do you practice gaining control over all these things so that you can control the fight?
Well, it's a very good question. But really, I always look at it when I was especially working on defense a little bit, was isolating pieces and components of it. Because you're trying to master range and you're trying to control range and seeing what people's keys are to trigger them to what they're going to do and so forth. But it's just focusing on those little individual areas. So the duck blocking and trying to avoid getting hit from a shot. So it's like focusing on what assessments can I gain from that? What can I go to the lab with, try different things, try to shift my center line on an opponent and work with that individual aspect, because I'm at A range with that kind of block, right? So I have to learn about what's in that fire first, play with that fire a little bit and focus on just that part of, hey, I'm going to see the shield position. What do people do with it? What do I have to do to adjust? What are my offense, gains from this for the risk I am going at with getting trapped with a shield over my head, and so really the nutshell, it's really just isolating components. It's like, I remember back in the day, it was the, you block the shot, you fire a shot off the block. That was the way the drills were. And that's what you did. When everybody's standing still and static, that works great to practice and be used at practice. And then everybody started moving around a lot more and then going to smaller shields and moving even more. But it really is just that isolating those pieces and those components of changing your position for what are the commonality shots that you're open for, and playing with the blocks in that position. Do I block my shield? Do I block my sword? What works better? What do I have? And do your risk assessment, I guess, is the best way. So like I said, the nutshell was isolate, and I went on farther. Sorry.
That's good. I'll very quickly just add that what I do is I actually have a little mantra that I run in my head when I'm fighting well, and I remember the mantra to run it. But it basically starts with, I tell myself, guard, range, assess, probe, assess, and then you just repeat over and over and over again. But you have to make sure, am I doing the right things in my guard? What are they doing in their guard? All right. What are they trying to do with range? What do I want to do with range? Okay. Assess, hopefully you've given yourself enough time to be able to make these assessments as you're fighting. Then you probe and fight. And I talked about this over a year ago. It's like sometimes a probe is an actual shot that kills somebody, but it was still a probe. I was still trying to figure something out with it. It just so happened what I figured out was I could hit you in the head real quick, but it was a probe. I was just trying to get some information that I could then process, because against another really good fighter, that's not going to be a win. But hopefully I will have taken some information from it. So keep that whole thing going. Yeah. Guard, range, assess, probe, fight, assess, keep it going over and over again. Sean, you have some thoughts on how to,
hey, Sean,
Craven?
Can I pop in real quick? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
and I'll finish up. But I think a key thing that it's been mentioned a lot is that observation piece, and and balance, and with that's a part where I think anybody that's working on defense and offense is observation, right? And when you're building your observation skills, that's what's helping you make decisions quickly. And and I would say that has to be that component, and that is probably the part that you really have to train is your observation. So over to Sean. Sorry, man.
No,
that came to my
absolutely. I
mind.
mean, no, observation is, that's one of the things I talk about all the time is being able to see the fight and being able to see it accurately, and making your decisions based on what is actually happening, not on what you expect to be happening, not what you hope is going to happen, but being able to slow down your fight enough to be able to actually see what's happening and have that observation. So yeah, I wanted to talk about some very specific and tangible things that y'all can do at practice, to kind of address some of these things. So especially in the early stages of fighting, when you're trying to read opponents, like we were talking about before, being able to see, long before the shot happens, what are their body mechanics doing that are telling you what they want to throw and where they want to go, and those sort of things. So some of the things you can do, again, we're talking about blows coming at you. We are like how to identify those things as far as up, down, left, right. One of the things that we can do for that is simply cataloging blows. So when you go to practice and you fight, I mean, you want to be careful, the caliber of fighter that you're doing this with. So you're not so much focused on cataloging that you're just getting hit a lot. But what you can do is you can just catalog blows into those quadrants, just up, down, left, right. One of the things that this does is, first off, it gives you an understanding of what is actually happening, because there's a lot of new fighters that just get killed. They don't even know where they get hit. They know that they're dead. It's like, oh, he hit me in the head. It's like, okay, well, was it flat snap, or was it offside, or was it a wrap, or how did he get to that leg? Did he throw a leg wrap, or did how are you getting these things? There's a lot of people that they know that they've been defeated, but they don't know why. They don't actually know where they got hit. It's a very common thing in early on in fighting. So by cataloging blows, you just get a better understanding of what's coming in, not so much for percentages of, well, this person likes to hit me in this quadrant a lot. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is how to identify what is coming at you. And it starts with cataloging blows, just being able to say upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. And by doing that, the next thing that you do from there is, okay, I got hit in the upper left. What was the last thing I remember seeing before he made contact? Right. So, if I see a shot out, just out here about a foot away from you, it's like, okay, that's what it looks like right before it landed. And as you get better at that, and you keep saying, well, how far back can I trace that back to its point of origin, to get an idea about, like, before he even moved, what is their hand doing? What is their body doing right before it goes to this quadrant? And so by cataloging those blows, again, it gives you a better understanding, again, of that observation, what's actually happening in the fight. And then you can kind of reverse engineer the shots back to their point of origin from there. And it's just one of those things that you can actively do at practice all the time to get a better understanding of what these blows look like as they're coming in. And, it's like, well, it started off, as this, and I thought it was going to be a flat snap and ended up being a leg snap. Okay, well, again, that's the left and right, and then the up and down, right? So cataloging blows, like, that's a very simple thing that you can do in the earliest stages of fighting, just to get an understanding of where you're at. The other thing that goes more to the range side of it is the probing range that Ailgheanan has talked about since the first time we had him on. I do probing range with I do it with footwork. I think Rangvaldr, we've talked about this before. Rangvaldr does it more with his hands. Rangos and Rangvaldr both do it more with their hands. They'll put a little jerk out one way or another to kind of see how you're going to react to things. I tend to do this more with my feet. So I will probe range with my feet, and what I'll do is I'll take a step into range, and what I'm looking for is how do people respond to certain stimulus, right? And when you're doing these things, when you're cataloging blows and when you're probing range, you have to be in a mindset at practice where you're doing these to gain an understanding of how people move. You're not doing these for the purpose of getting a win, right? So when we're probing range, it's going to be, I'm going to step on the center line into B range. And how does my opponent respond to that, right? And all it is just cataloging information. It's just data collection. It's understanding how various people respond to different stimulus. I'm going to take a step on a 45. How do they respond? Oh, that's an interesting response. I'm going to take a step on the 45 the other way. How do they respond? Well, that's interesting too. And so that gives you a better understanding of range, gets you to the point where, you know, when you're probing range like this, there's, I mean, 3 different responses that are possible, right? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? So either your opponent is going to run away from you, or they're going to take a shot at you, or they're going to stand there and block, right? Those are the primary responses that you're going to get on that. The worst case scenario of that, obviously, is if I take a step into range, my opponent takes a shot at me, and that's as bad as it can get, right? If I understand that that's as bad as it can get, I'm okay with that. I'm prepared for that. And now I get to do this probing where I'm like, what do I have to do to make him feel like he can throw at me? Or what do I have to do? Where do I have to be for him to feel like he has to throw a shot at me, right? And using the probing range just as a tool that you can use at practice to get a better understanding of where you are within your opponent's range, where you want to be within your range as well, where your opponent feels threatened, where you feel threatened. And you can do this, you know, fighters of varying, you know, heights. I mean, you can go to one practice down in Tucson and do it against Craven, and then, you know, go to a practice in Twin Moons and do it against Ailgheanan, and it is a totally different probe. the range on those are totally different. Those are a couple of things that we can do at practice, really at any level, to get a better understanding of shots that are coming in at us and get a better understanding of range and how to manipulate that range.
No, that's good insight on that. One of the things, I know that we've talked around it. We maybe even talked through it some a little bit, but quite often I'll use a set of offensive blows or a combination or even probes to stymie my opponent's offense. So you can actually use, you know, very defensively, you can use offense to shut your opponent down, to allow you the opportunity to do all this other stuff where you're processing and trying to figure out your win, you know. But oftentimes it'll just be a simple, you know, I need to do something and I don't want to get hit. So how can I make this not happen? Well, I'll attack them. You know, and I attack. So a lot of times when I want to do any of my movement in or out of a situation, almost always has a sword side attack associated with it. You know, I'm trying to hit my opponent in the eye on their sword side. And if they can block that and hit me as I'm making that movement, well, great. They did something really cool. But it's really hard to make sure that you don't get hit in the side of the head, and have a really good offense. So when I'm wanting to close on someone, you can almost guarantee that there's going to be a shot that kind of comes in offside, you know, on a right-handed opponent, you know, on the sword side, and it threatens that area so that I can try to control the sword so that I can get my movement in. So that's, you know, I think we all, and I've seen us all use some element of offense to manage our defense. So we've got all of that. We've got that. We've got the range control, the ability to dodge, you know, passive blocks and passive defenses, very active defenses. We've got all the movement associated with defense. We've got all these things. And then we've got people asking us, well, how do you go and process all that stuff? And then the next question that comes in was, well, how do you do all that with, you know, using the you know, sort of the clear mind technique, or, you know, how can you do all that stuff and think about all that stuff and also, you know, defend properly and attack properly with a clear mind? And I think I know the answer to that question, but I'm more curious as to what these guys think.
I'll go. So it's the awful P word. You have to practice. All the parts we talked about here that are tools, that's why you practice them. So when you do them, like I listened to Ailgheanan talk about going in and coming out and throwing a shot. And that is what people see. I think what they don't see, and I'm going to speak for you, Ailgheanan, here, and I'm going to assume that I'm correct. He's choosing these, and like Sean said, using shots, attacking offensively as a defense. These are tools, but they're chosen, they're tactics. They're tactics that are chosen based on the information they have from an opponent. I will bet you money that Ailgheanan does not throw a shot every time he comes in or every time he disengages. He does that when there are specific set of situations. He's closed an opponent. He's done what he feels should be successful. For whatever reason, it wasn't successful. He's decided to disengage. He knows he's put the opponent at some level of disadvantage, but they still have some ability left in them. So as a safety, he's firing at their weapon side in a way that means either you block the shot or you die. So they have to deal with the shot in that split second, allowing him to disengage. So it's all planned. It all has a purpose. He doesn't do it every time. He does it because that's what applies to this particular opponent. That goes back to our control. That goes back to our gathering information.
Yeah, that is actually a much more accurate way to say it. If I'm doing what I've said there, it is because I have been threatened by that sword. There's a reason to, if I don't feel that that sword's a threat, then yeah, why should I worry about trying to, come out of guard to make that movement? If I can move and stay in guard, yes, I'll move and stay in guard. But if I'm concerned about getting hit in that movement, well, then I might try to threaten the thing that can hit me. One of the things I notice, and I've noticed over the years when I fight Rangvaldr and when I watch Rangvaldr fight, is he is so keenly interested in where his opponent's sword hand is. I mean, it's almost disturbing how focused Rangvaldr can get on that. And, and I joked about it one time, and I think your response, was, yeah, well, I'm not really worried about anything else. It can't hit me. It's
Yeah.
like,
That's exactly it. It's something I learned from martial arts when a lot of us who have martial arts background, and I talk to people who have it, they typically, the way I put it is your eyes have to look somewhere. And some people are like, well, I'm not looking at anything. Okay, well, that's not true. Your eyes are pointing somewhere and you're using your peripheral vision. That's
right.
What you should be doing. But where should your eyes point? Well, typically we like to look in the torso, the upper torso in particular, because it's sort of a center position. Because in most martial arts, we don't know what's coming. And you're dealing with an opponent who has multiple weapons, essentially, right? You got hands, elbows, knees, feet. There's a whole set of tools that I want to keep an eye on. So you tend to put your eyes in the middle and use your peripheral. Well, with our sport, you typically have one weapon to watch. And when there's two weapons, I have a variation on it. But basically, my eyes go generally to where the sword is, because the body can lie, the eyes can lie, all that can lie, but the hand can't lie. You can't do a sword fake, pull it back and fire, because once you pull it back, the sword fake, any advantage you got from it is lost. You have to correct it to fire. You can put your body into a threat to an area and still throw in another area if that hand still remains where it belongs. But you can't do that with your hand. I can't drop my hand down here and throw this side without pulling it back to here to get the shot. You can see it if you're watching the hand. So that's why I watch it. Now, depending on the opponent, I will sometimes change the eye position. I'll move it down into the elbow because seeing the elbow means I can see the hand. So there are variations on it, but basically, yeah, I keep my eyes on that hand. Now, when you deal with a two-weapon fighter, what I'm looking for is what makes them want to, just like I do with a single hand or two-handed weapon, what makes them want to throw with that particular sword or defend with that particular sword. So I can choose a position that weakens one of their weapons and a threat that weakens the other one. So it's basically the same thing. It's just multiples.
Yeah. I've seen Craven in his guard before. I don't know. I don't think Craven, I don't think you can see anything but your opponent's feet, but you seem to always know where the blow's going to come from just your ability to, I mean, I don't know how you can see. Sometimes when you're in your, what we would call the Craven sombrero, where your shield's basically over your head, it's like, how do you even know, uh, how to defend that? But, I mean, I think I also know the answer to that, but I'd like to hear you say, how is it that you seem to be in a really disadvantageous position, yet it's almost impossible to get hit from there?
Well, I have one question first, though, for Rangvaldr. When you're fighting me, do you watch my hilt, my chest? Where are you watching so I know? But
it's not going to work. I've been trying that for years.
Typically, I watch your hand, and I know that as a lefty, I know a couple of things. That you have high skill, you are faster than I am, and you are quicker, being two separate things. Your hand speed is greater than mine is, and you are quicker in your movement than I am. So I know that I will not outmove you. I know that I will not outshoot you. So I have to give you false information to make you make your decisions ahead of time. We had, I don't remember if it was a champions fight or not. I think it was.
It was.
It was a champions
Craven
fight.
was my champion for
there's
that.
There's a great picture of me whiffing. I mean, and I don't even mean close. I mean like 3 feet up in the air because he totally dropped. But I know about that drop, and I understand its strength. So in that case, I disengaged because he'll explode out of that. And what people don't get is this is like Ailgheanan talking about. Craven, I want you to correct me if I'm right or wrong, but I'm saying this because you wanted to know what I'm seeing. So this is what I'm seeing. You choose that position, not because, hey, this is a great thing I do. You do that because an opponent has committed themselves to a forward, upward attack. It means you can drop, not worry about them moving or being hit because their body has pushed their shot too high to deal with a low target. So you drop into a place that you don't really need to see their weapon. You just know it's above you, therefore the shield's high. So what I want to say that we fought, I don't know if it's before or after that, but we fought several times, and you've done that to me a couple times, and I realized this is the strength of that. So what I started looking to do was to threat high, to get you to drop, because once you do drop, if I maintain my position, you can't see high, and now I can throw low shots that you cannot see coming, and now you're the one who's fixed in position. But it's not like we were talking about. It's not like when Craven does the thing, I do this thing. No, that's not how it works. I have to do a thing, in this case, that high threat in a convincing way that makes you feel like safe is down, but still maintain enough of my own position that I can go down, that I can keep my position and now fire my low shots into your now stagnant position. So that's what I do with it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Craven?
Yeah, it definitely does make sense. And it also, was on my books to work with. We've had some really fun intellectual fights.
Yes.
But I want to say, Alan, on that part about the behind the shield thing, yeah, you're blind, right? And then, a long time ago, like in a culture like Ailgheanan, like in the central part of the state, everybody was so focused on melee. So you learn a lot of melee mindsets applied to singles fighting, right? So you get blind, your job's to just disengage, right? And so for me, what I started doing, and this is kind of like to the observation everybody was talking about, you're learning people's behavior. I'm social engineering with people the whole time, trying to learn common habits and try to build up probabilities for things with people. And what I learned by being down and knowing where they're going to throw, well, their torso tells you if they're high, their hand tells you if they're high. I have the advantage of being left-handed. When I'm fighting a right-handed person, I have a great view of their upper sword side. And then if their feet are pointed in a direction that they can't throw a certain shot without being uncomfortable, it's obvious that they're going to my backside, to my shield side. It's really, you start reading that body motion from there and you have a great view. Their feet and their legs tell you. And that's why I like the fake to where he's putting the pressure high. He's not just like raising his hands up high. He's putting tension up high on me so I believe that he's going high and committed. And then that's why he rolls down and throws the leg shot and gets the leg shot, and so he has to do a deceptive upper body movement by maintaining his balance, but that is just judging people by their common behaviors. And you look at the feet, everybody knows you point your feet to the left side, you point your feet to the right side, that's the direction you're going. And so that's kind of the answer to that question there, but it's all that observation. And so I fight from there all the time. So I just build up my database from practice over and over and over again.
It's funny. I talk to guys and they're like, well, can you help me with Craven on how to beat that situation? And I'm like, don't get in that situation. I mean, why would you want to try to work on this one thing to do with this one person who's damn near perfected that? Instead, don't do that. If you get in a situation where he's down there, go away. Because
not to mention that the situation that Ailgheanan ends up in with Craven is not going to be the situation that I end up with in. I mean, can you help me with this thing that Craven does? I'm like, no, because he's going to do something totally different to you. Because he's going to do to you what he needs to do based on his observations, based on what is actually happening in the fight, not based on what you saw him do to me.
You're exactly right. I mean, and I try to never get in that situation when I fight Craven. I mean, I want Craven trying to chase me and being out of position and coming out of his guard to hit me. I'm longer and taller, and even if our swords are the same length, my arm's a little bit longer. So if I can get him to make a mistake trying to hit me, why would I want to go over there and do something he does great, which is fight really close? I don't feel like I have any advantage being 6'5" if I'm standing on top of him and he's basically looking at my feet and holding his shield up high and taking whatever shots he wants. So I just don't do that.
Yeah, Ailgheanan, you're correct. Sean said it when he talked about practicing what I call is like a mental replay. So you do it at practice, and when a thing happens, you disengage. And what I like to do especially, I tell others because I do it, but at practice, understand it's practice. Change the parameters of the fight to get it the way you want. If you want to learn how to do this mental replay and your opponent is a good opponent and keeps re-engaging you, it's practice. Just tell them, look, when I disengage, let me disengage. I need to process for a second. It's practice. Do it, right? So take that moment to step back and think, okay, this is what happened. What happened before that? And when Sean talks about going back to that, the origin of that, that's what's happening. Go back to that. And that is what Ailgheanan's talking about with Craven's example. How do I deal with Craven's this great technique he has? You know what? Don't get in that situation. How do I not get in that situation? You do what Sean says. You practice understanding what makes a person do the thing that gets their advantage, and then you don't ever let them have that advantage. Right. That's what I did with Craven. That's the only reason that I can get success against Craven. If I tried to stand toe to toe, they would be very short fights, and I would lose almost all of them. I bet you I would lose because he's just faster, quicker, and he's a highly skilled fighter who knows how to read his opponent. I need him to read me wrongly. That's the only way that I can get an advantage.
And I like what you say, Rangvaldr, about how you feed misinformation. Your deception isn't a fake. It's a whole series of misinformation that sometimes starts at the beginning of the fight, and 2-3 minutes later in the fight, you're still feeding a series of misinformation so that then you can act upon it and create a situation that your opponent feels like they've collected all this information. So now they're ready for it. And it turns out that was all just the big Rangvaldr lie.
Yes. Yeah. A gentleman who used to be one of my dependents, that's what he says, Sir Akosh, His Excellency, that he tells everybody that his knight was the best liar. So that's who I am. I'm the best liar.
I think I'm a pretty good liar, but I tell fast lies. You tell really long stories.
I sort of
So-
lull you to sleep.
So one of the things I wanted to kind of come back to real quickly was this notion of how can you think about all these different things and still have quote unquote a clear mind? You know, it is a lot to think about. If you're trying to control and manage all these things, and the answer was already given, you've got to go to practice and you've got to practice all these things. And you got to put yourself in a position to where you're practicing all the elements of fighting, all the defensive elements and all the offensive elements and all the things in between, but you go practice them so that they become, you know, we talk about muscle memory a lot, and we almost are always talking about throwing a shot. But the muscle memory of knowing what to do and when to do it is mental muscle memory. And it's every bit as important, and it's every bit as much as something you can train. You put yourself in situations, you go to practice and you manipulate the practice so that you can practice the things that you need to work on, so that the reactions, when they come tournament time, the reactions will be muscle memory, and you're not having to, you know, you're not always constantly running through all the checklist of how to win the fight in the middle of the fight. A lot of it has become automatic, mentally automatic. And when you're doing it right, it's just the tournament or the singles fight where you're trying to win is an expression of all the practice that you've put in. It's just the regurgitation of the practice. It's, you know, and you're not having to overly think about it. However, when we have this concept of a clear mind, I don't think that it means you're not thinking. You're still able to do some processing as you're fighting, but you're not being distracted by the things that you don't need to be distracted by. You're not, first of all, you're not emotionally getting invested in the fight. You're not being concerned with, I think they should have called that last one, or, you know, what do I got to do to get, you know, you're not letting the emotional components of a fight get in your way, because that is definitely not a clear mind. And you are not having to do some of the basic day-to-day thinkings about how fighting works because you went and practiced all those things. You know, it doesn't. So to me, a clear mind does not mean you're not thinking. It's just that you put yourself in a situation where you're thinking about only the things that really matter. Does that sound like clear mind to everyone else, or do they have kind of a different definition?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I found, you know, I don't know if, because I've done this for so long, I don't know if it actually helps me with fighting, but I think it's, at the very least, it's a good example. I practice, what we're talking about is you
No
make
mind,
certain
not clear
things.
mind, sorry.
Right. Yeah, no mind. Some people call it clear mind. I think we're all on the same page. We all know what we're talking about and don't know what we're talking about, I think, all at the same time. It's not a place where you don't think about anything. You're at a place where there are so many things that happen on almost a subconscious level that your conscious mind is left free to process other information. I can be in a fight and make blocks and move in positions that give me advantages and keep me safe automatically. And if I'm in the right place, I can do that automatically. And because of that, that allows my conscious mind to process what the person's doing while they're doing that. Oh, this is how fast he is. This is how fast he moves. This is the way he likes to move. He likes to do this with his shield. These are his favorite shots. And I can quickly catalog those. So when Sean's talking about cataloging, he's not talking about try to remember everybody's things. What he's talking about is learning how to catalog. That's what you're really doing. You're cataloging not to remember them all, not for the catalog. You're doing it for the process of cataloging. So you can recatalog. I've seen people who have done studied videos. I watch videos all the time, so I know exactly how so-and-so fights. Yeah, how does he fight today? How does he fight you? That changes all the time. So the stored catalog is not important. The ability to catalog is. So I'm getting a little long-winded here. The thing I was talking about anyway is I try to do some day-to-day things in a particular way as a way to practice this kind of thing. That is, once you've made little decisions, you do them, and while you're doing them, you begin to process the next decision. Okay, so as an example, putting dishes in the dishwasher. Okay, you take a dish, you rinse it, you stick in the dishwasher. Okay, there's your actions. but the way you do the actions is what's important. So as you reach to pick up the plate, you've made the decision to pick up the plate. You no longer think about picking up the plate, you turn the faucet on. As soon as the faucet's on, you begin to think about moving the plate to the water. See, so everything is, as I'm taking an action, physically, mentally, I'm making the next decision. So as I turn the water off, I know the next step is to the dishwasher. So as I turn this off, I'm no longer looking at this. I'm no longer looking at my plate. I'm moving to my decision to turn the water off. My next decision is to put the dish away. So I'm moving this way. And once the dish goes into its spot, I can turn back and begin to reach for the next dish. So there's this overlap. And fighting is a lot like that. Decisions are made, and once they're executed, you can begin to process the next one. And the only reason that works is because you've practiced how to do them individually. I will bet you money all three of these guys, especially with their talents and physical abilities, that all of them, when they do something like, say, throw a shot in a fight, once they've thrown that shot, they forgot about it. It doesn't exist anymore. They are now on to whatever's next. Where you're moving, how you're throwing, where they need to go next. Is that shot going to hit? They're not even waiting for it to hit. They already know if it's going to hit. They're moving on to the next thing. Does that sound right to you guys? Is that what's happening in your heads as well?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean,
Absolutely.
If I think about it at all, it's only from an analysis standpoint of, well, how can I improve that?
Yes. Yep. You're right back to what you talked about, the control and the gather of information. And you can do that because while you're throwing your shot or blocking or moving or the more frequently, the combination of these, I've chosen this movement at this time in this way with this shield position to throw this shot. Once you've executed all those things together, once you've started them, you are now into, where am I going next? Oh, he's moving this way. So I'm going to begin to shift. So I end up in that new place. So fighting isn't, I'm going to do this shot, bang. What am I going to do next? Well, you're dead, dude.
All right, Duke Rangvaldr, thank you very much. It's been too long since you've been a part of Coach's Corner. I know you had a lot of Fridays there for a long time, but you've very much been missed. Your perspective and your experience are always just, to me, they're telling. And people are always, I hear people will like Bronus and Rangvaldr, and it's like, it's not. And it's more of like an and or kind of a thing, because they might tell you the same thing, but sometimes they'll tell it to you differently. You've told me things sometimes, Rangvaldr, before that Bronus has told me, but I couldn't connect. And then you told it to me in a way that allowed me to understand it. So, you guys will probably always be sort of joined at the hip in how the fighting world thinks of you. But I mean, I think we're very grateful that you are two different people and you have two different ways about thinking things. Even when you think necessarily the same way about something, you're coming from it from different directions and have two different ways of saying it. So we're very grateful to have you with us tonight. Thank you so much, Duke Craven, for joining us. Have you got any parting shots for us?
I think just a short bit of, just remembering to keep it in balance, and then you train it, you practice observing, you build data in your analysis. Those are all the key things. And then the clear mind is a practice thing also. I totally agree on that. I just wanted to throw that part in there too. It's just like, I'm fighting. I don't care. I'm peeling potatoes and not thinking.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And as soon as I get my knee repaired, I'll be looking for you. Look forward to our ability to cross swords again soon. His Majesty Sean, coming to us from the heart of Artemisia. Thank you very much. You've been very, very well spoken and knowledgeable this evening, and we are so grateful to have you. Plus, I think you might also have some info for us on a coming show.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, I mean, it's one of the great honors of my life to be a part of the Coach's Corner. So happy to do this any chance I get. And of course, speaking with Craven and Rangvaldr and Ailgheanan is always, I mean, that's the whole point of this, is just being able to sit around and talk stick with some of the best minds in the world. So next week on the Coach's Corner, we're actually doing one of our first pre-recorded episodes. It's something we're trying out. We're hoping you guys will still be able to follow along. I'm going to be doing an episode with a handful of other crowns who are in the transition phase coming out of the plague. So we have Her Majesty Rifkin, who's one of our coaches. We have His Majesty Hirsch from Callantyr, and His Majesty Barrick from Outlands, who both just stepped up recently as well. You know, it's been a long 2 years, and coming out of this pandemic, there are some things that those of us who have decided to enter Crown at this time to take the helm of the kingdoms, you know, we kind of knew what we were getting into in ways that our predecessors simply did not, because you know, you just couldn't have seen this coming a couple of years ago. So we're going to kind of talk about some of the things that influenced our decision to enter those lists, and some of the things that we've had to deal with and need to be on the lookout as we try to get back to any semblance of normal, and trying to transition some of these crowns. So really looking forward to that conversation with those folks.
It sounds amazing. And I know I speak for everyone here, man, to yourself and to all the crowns who stepped up when I mean, it's not like those crowns who were pandemic crowns who didn't see it coming because we didn't have an opportunity to see it coming. You know, they got blindsided by this, and they did such an amazing job to get us through this. And then this wave that you're a part of people who knew that this is not going to be the best reign, you know, but someone needs to do it, and someone needs to try to hopefully set up the reign that's coming after, so that they actually might have a chance to have a great and magical reign. It's really hard to have magic right now, but I am so grateful to yourself and all the other crowns and royalty, and the people who've stepped up, and the seneschals, and all the people who are working really hard to try to, you know, help navigate us through weird, trying times. So we're very grateful for all that. We look forward to seeing everyone again next week. And just very quickly, I wanted to, you know, say that, you know, this episode kind of goes out to our own Viscount Sagan, who's going through some personal tragedy in his life. We just wanted to let you know that your extended family here at the Coach's Corner, and all of our listeners, you know, we're right there for you, and we love you very much. So good night, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.
Thank you.